Welcome back. In this training video, we'll learn how to add and edit suppliers. The suppliers form is where we set up and maintain information that is unique to each supplier. And setting up the suppliers correctly is a very important task, because much of the information on the suppliers form becomes the default information when we create purchase orders or enter AP vouchers. So let's get started. The suppliers form can be found in the Accounting and Finance main menu, then in the Accounts Payable submenu, which displays the supplier menu icon in the functional menu. The form can also be accessed by typing SUP into the menu code area on the FOURA navigator. Let's take a quick look at a supplier that's already set up. Then we'll add a new supplier with basic information. The suppliers form consists of a header section. The body of the form has 5 tabs that are used to set up and maintain various data elements. And in the footer section, you'll see record counters and status. In the header section is the standard FOURA toolbar. There's also a quick filter that can be used to filter supplier records using some of the predefined filters. The attachment button enables users to attach electronic documents to the supplier record. A good example of this might be to attach a completed W-9 form to the supplier. There are 5 tabs in the body of the form. The Key Info tab is where we maintain key supplier data such as the address, 1099 reporting status, payment types, payment terms, SBA classifications, and account defaults. Many of the fields that we define here will be displayed as defaults on other forms, such as purchase orders and AP vouchers. The Contacts tab is where we set up and maintain various supplier contacts. Select the type, enter a name, title, phone number, fax, and email address. There's an active flag for each row so that the contacts can evolve with the supplier relationship over time. The Items tab will display all the items purchased on purchase orders from the supplier. This tab will also accumulate various statistics by item number, such as quantities ordered, average cost, and last PO. The Remit To tab is where we can assign both the default Remit To and alternate Remit To addresses to support the complex supplier payment arrangements. I'll talk more about this in a minute. The Notes tab is where we can enter any supplier-specific notes. Each note is supported by a date and information on who created and edited the note. Now that we've had a brief glimpse of the basic structure in the suppliers form, let's add a new supplier. It's worth mentioning here that it's good practice to utilize a new supplier form to request the basic information from the supplier. This helps your business capture agreed payment terms, 1099 reporting status, SBA classification, etc. Our recommended practice would be to use a new supplier form to set up a new supplier, then scan it and attach it to the supplier record in FOURA. To add a new supplier, select the plus button found in the toolbar header menu, and a blank supplier form will appear. The first thing you'll probably notice that there are 2 required fields that are identified by a yellow triangle to the right of each field. These 2 fields need to be filled out before the supplier can be saved. The first thing we need to do is make sure that we're not entering any duplicate supplier record. It can be easy to do in other systems, and if done, it can create some confusion later on. But FOURA has a built-in feature that allows us to do a quick inline check to avoid such problems. Our new supplier is Aquafria Supplies Inc. So we're going to enter the smallest distinct portion of the name or address and press Tab on the keyboard to exit the field. Any matching suppliers will be immediately displayed in the existing tab at the bottom of the form. And as you can see, we also have a supplier whose name is Aquarium Connection with a supplier code of AQ010. Now that we know that we don't have any duplicates, we need to assign a unique supplier code to our new supplier. FOURA has an easy systemic process for assigning a supplier code. Simply enter the first 2 alphanumeric characters of the supplier name, followed by a question mark, and then press the Tab key on the keyboard to exit the field. FOURA will assign the next unique supplier code in the sequence. The code assigned by FOURA in our new supplier is AQ020. Out of the box, FOURA will increment these code assignment segments by 10, but your local FOURA system administrator can adjust that if your business requires it. Use the Tab key or your mouse to advance the cursor while entering the supplier name and address section. And enter their website. Now we have some checkboxes to review. The new supplier record defaults to active, so we'll leave that as checked. We would need to select the employee checkbox if the supplier is an employee and will be receiving a check for any non-payroll purposes like expense reports. If the supplier is a credit card provider, we would select the credit card checkbox. Think Visa or American Express here. Selecting this checkbox helps identify these specific suppliers as well as identifies the supplier as a means for payment in other areas of FOURA. If we have the supplier's W-9 form, we can enter the federal ID and 1099 numbers and types. We can also enter their Dun & Bradstreet number if we have it. Now we can enter the default payment type by selecting whether we will pay the supplier by ACH transfer, check, payment card, or wire transfer. We will also want to set the defaults for payment terms, Incoterms, shipping terms, and currency code. Now we can enter any supplier-specific notes on this Add Suppliers form. Or we can hold off and enter the notes on the main suppliers form in just a moment. Once we're done entering the basic supplier information, we select the Add button at the bottom of the form. And we're taken to the next setup screen to complete any supplier contact information and remit to addresses. There are two tabs at the bottom of the Key Info tab for 500-character notes. The supplier notes are generally for operational expediency or key reminders. Any notes written on the Purchase Order tab will be printed on the POs or AP vouchers for that supplier. On the Remit To tab, if we select the Add Default button, the default Remit To address is populated from the supplier address we entered on the Key Info tab. If we need to enter a different Remit To address for the supplier, we can select the plus button from the menu bar just above the header row in the grid area, assign a new code, and provide the address information. If we have two or more Remit To addresses set up on the supplier, then we can use the default Remit To drop-down menu to select the default Remit To address. Notice that any supplier selected as a credit card supplier will also appear in this list. The selected default will be the default on any AP vouchers that we create for this supplier, but it can be changed on the voucher if needed to one of the other documented Remit To addresses for the supplier. And that's it for setting up a new supplier. And as we mentioned before, much of the data entered on the new supplier record will now show up on any new purchase order or AP voucher. Before we leave, let's take a quick look at the Browse Supplier form. The Browse Supplier form can be found on the Accounting and Finance main menu, then in the Accounts Payable submenu, which displays the Browse Suppliers menu icon in the functional menu. The form can also be accessed by typing BSP into the menu code area on the FOURA Navigator. The Browse Suppliers form is useful in viewing the entire suppliers list in a grid format. This form is for viewing only, but we can drill into the individual suppliers from here by selecting the Drill In icon next to the supplier code. This form also shows some statistics that can be useful to evaluate your position with the supplier. To make sure that you're looking at the latest information, select the Update Calcs button at the top. To view the supplier details, see the purchase orders issued to the supplier, or to view invoices entered from the supplier, simply select the row header and then select one of the aptly named buttons on the bottom of the form. To learn more about the Browse Form functionality, please see the Browse Form and Column Chooser topics in FOURA's help file. Well, that wraps up this tutorial. Please be sure to check out additional tutorials to learn more about FOURA's powerful features, processes, and tips. Thanks for watching.